Welcome to Books Breakdown, where books are transformed into powerful knowledge. In today's video, we'll explore Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert T. Kiyosaki, one of the most influential personal finance books ever written. Through the story of two fathers with completely different mindsets about money, the book reveals why some people struggle financially, while others build wealth and financial freedom. In this summary, you'll discover important lessons about money, assets, liabilities, and the mindset of the rich. Whether you're a student, entrepreneur, or someone looking to improve your financial future, this book offers ideas that can completely change the way you think about money. So, sit back, relax, and let's begin this journey into the world of financial wisdom. In Rich Dad, Poor Dad, Robert Kiyosaki introduces the story of growing up with two father figures who had completely different beliefs about money and success. His real father, called Poor Dad, was highly educated and believed in studying hard, getting good grades, finding a secure job, and working steadily throughout life, yet he struggled financially despite his intelligence. On the other hand, his best friend's father, called Rich Dad, had less formal education, but deeply understood money, business, investing, and wealth creation. Through Rich Dad's lessons and real-life experiences, Robert begins learning that the biggest difference between rich and poor people is not salary or education, but mindset and financial intelligence. The book challenges traditional beliefs about money and teaches readers the importance of assets, financial education, entrepreneurship, investing, and making money work for you instead of spending your entire life working for money. Lesson 1. The rich don't work for money. The first lesson of the book focuses on how most people become trapped working for money instead of learning how to make money work for them. As a child growing up in Hawaii, Robert Kiyosaki notices the difference between rich and ordinary families after being excluded by wealthier classmates. Wanting to learn how to become rich, he first asks his educated but financially struggling father, later called Poor Dad. Since his father cannot truly teach wealth creation, Robert and his friend Mike begin learning from Mike's father, known as Rich Dad. Rich Dad teaches through experience rather than lectures. He gives the boys boring jobs in his store for only 10 cents an hour. After weeks of frustration and anger, Robert finally confronts him. Rich Dad explains that he created the situation intentionally to show how emotions control most people's financial lives. According to him, the two strongest emotions are fear and desire. Fear pushes people to search for secure jobs and steady salaries, while desire makes them spend money on bigger lifestyles and unnecessary luxuries. Together, these emotions trap people in what Rich Dad calls the rat race, where people work, earn money, pay bills, and repeat the cycle for their entire lives. Rich Dad explains that most people think earning more money will solve financial problems, but higher salaries usually lead to higher spending and debt. Instead of learning how money works, people become dependent on paychecks. He says the poor and middle class work for money, while the rich make money work for them by building businesses, investments, and assets that generate income automatically. True wealth comes from owning assets rather than relying only on a job. Another important lesson is that schools rarely teach financial intelligence. Students are trained to become employees, not entrepreneurs or investors. Rich Dad also teaches the importance of mindset. Instead of saying, "I can't afford it," he believes people should ask, "How can I afford it?" because questions force the brain to think creatively and search for solutions. By the end of the lesson, Robert realizes that wealth is not mainly about education or salary, but about mindset, habits, and financial understanding. The chapter's main message is that people who only work for money may stay trapped financially, while those who understand money and build assets can eventually achieve financial freedom. Lesson 2. Why teach financial literacy? In the second lesson, Robert Kiyosaki explains that most people struggle financially because they lack financial literacy, not because they are unintelligent. Schools teach students how to earn money through jobs, but rarely teach how to manage, grow, or protect money. Rich Dad believes this is why many educated people still face financial problems despite earning good salaries. The most important concept in this lesson is the difference between assets and liabilities. Rich Dad defines an asset as something that puts money into your pocket, while a liability takes money out. According to him, poor people mainly have expenses, while middle-class people often buy liabilities such as expensive houses, cars, and luxury items thinking they are assets. These things usually create ongoing costs like loans, taxes, repairs, and maintenance. Rich people, however, focus on buying real assets such as businesses, investments, stocks, and rental properties that generate passive income. Over time, these assets create more cash flow and financial security. Rich Dad repeatedly says that wealth is not about how much money a person earns, but how much money they keep and how effectively they make it work for them. Another key idea is cash flow. Poor and middle-class people spend most of their income on expenses and liabilities, while rich people direct their income toward assets that produce additional income. Rich Dad also criticizes society's obsession with looking rich, explaining that many people buy expensive things to impress others while secretly struggling with debt. By the end of the lesson, Robert understands that financial freedom comes from financial intelligence, disciplined money management, and building assets that generate income. The chapter's main message is that true wealth is created through smart financial decisions, not just high salaries or social status. Lesson 3. Mind your own business. In the third lesson, Robert Kiyosaki explains that rich people focus on building and owning assets, while most people spend their lives working to build someone else's business. Rich Dad teaches Robert that employees often work hard, believing promotions and higher salaries will make them wealthy, but in reality, they become more dependent on their jobs. He repeatedly says, "Mind your own business," meaning people should focus on creating assets that belong to them instead of relying completely on employment. Rich Dad explains that many people confuse their profession with their business. Someone may be a doctor, teacher, or engineer, but those are professions that generate income, not true businesses that create long-term wealth. Financially intelligent people use their jobs to support themselves while slowly building assets such as businesses, stocks, investments, or real estate. Over time, these assets begin generating passive income and reduce dependence on salaries. Another major idea in this chapter is the danger of lifestyle inflation. When most people earn more money, they quickly increase their spending on bigger houses, luxury cars, and expensive lifestyles. These purchases often become liabilities that create more financial pressure. Rich Dad believes truly wealthy people first build strong income-producing assets and only later use profits from those assets to enjoy luxuries safely. Rich Dad also explains that real wealth is not about looking rich through expensive possessions. Many people appear successful while secretly struggling with debt. According to him, true wealth comes from ownership and cash flow, owning assets that continue producing income even when a person is not actively working. Throughout the lesson, Rich Dad encourages Robert to think like an owner rather than just a worker. Employees trade time for money, but owners build systems and investments that continue earning money over time. He also emphasizes discipline, patience, and long-term thinking, explaining that wealth is built slowly through consistent asset building rather than quick success. By the end of the chapter, Robert understands that financial freedom comes from ownership, smart investing, and building assets alongside a profession. The lesson's core message is that people should not spend their entire lives only earning money, but should focus on creating systems and assets that make money work for them. Lesson 4. The history of taxes and the power of corporations. In Rich Dad, Poor Dad, Lesson 4, Robert Kiyosaki explains that the rich become financially stronger, not just because they earn more money, but because they understand taxes, corporations, and financial systems better than ordinary people. Rich Dad teaches Robert that most schools train people to become employees, but rarely teach subjects like taxes, accounting, investing, or business structures. Because of this, many hardworking employees lose a large portion of their income through taxes and expenses, while wealthy people use legal systems to protect and grow their money. Rich Dad explains that taxes were originally introduced mainly to target the rich, but over time, the tax burden expanded to the middle class and working people. Employees usually earn salaries first, pay taxes immediately, and spend whatever remains. Wealthy people, however, often earn through businesses and corporations, spend on legitimate business expenses, and then pay taxes afterward. This creates a major financial advantage because business owners and investors are able to keep more of their income. A major concept in this chapter is the power of corporations. Rich Dad explains that corporations are legal structures that help protect wealth and reduce financial risk. Wealthy people use them to separate personal and business assets, lower liabilities, and manage money more efficiently. According to him, financially intelligent people focus not only on earning money, but also on protecting it. Rich Dad also says that many employees are trapped because they depend entirely on earned income from jobs. Since their income depends on working hours, they remain heavily taxed and financially dependent. Rich people focus more on passive income through businesses, real estate, and investments. This allows money to work for them instead of constantly working for money. Another key lesson is that financial intelligence is more important than simply working harder. Rich Dad encourages Robert to study accounting, investing, law, and business because these subjects provide long-term financial advantages. He believes people should understand the rules of money instead of complaining about the system. Governments often reward business ownership and investment through tax benefits because they help grow the economy. By the end of the chapter, Robert understands that true wealth is built through financial education, ownership, and strategic thinking. The lesson teaches that there is a huge difference between earning money and keeping money, and people who understand taxes and financial systems have a much greater chance of achieving financial freedom. Lesson 5. The rich invent money. In Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Lesson 5. Robert Kiyosaki explains that rich people create wealth because they think differently about money and opportunities. Rich Dad teaches Robert that financial intelligence, creativity, confidence, and action are more important than simply earning a salary. According to him, many people remain financially stuck because they focus only on job security instead of learning how to recognize and create opportunities. Rich Dad explains that opportunities exist everywhere, but fear and doubt stop most people from taking action. Poor and middle-class individuals often avoid risks because they fear failure or losing money, while wealthy people see mistakes as learning experiences. Successful investors and entrepreneurs understand that failure is part of growth, and they continue improving instead of giving up. Another important lesson is that wealthy people often recognize value before others do. They study markets, trends, businesses, and investments carefully so they can spot opportunities early. Rich Dad also says that academic intelligence alone does not guarantee financial success. Many highly educated people struggle financially because they overthink risks and hesitate to act, while financially successful people are usually more willing to take calculated risks and learn through experience. The chapter also highlights the importance of developing multiple financial skills such as accounting, investing, sales, communication, and negotiation. Rich Dad explains that wealthy people use leverage through businesses, investments, and systems to multiply their results, while ordinary workers rely only on their own labor and limited time. Throughout the lesson, Rich Dad encourages lifelong learning and independent thinking. He believes money is largely a reflection of mindset. People who focus only on fear and limitations often remain financially trapped, while those who develop financial education, creativity, and courage are more likely to achieve financial freedom. By the end of the chapter, Robert realizes that rich people do not wait for opportunities to appear. They create opportunities through knowledge, action, and smart thinking. Lesson 6. Work to learn, don't work for money. In Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Lesson 6, Robert Kiyosaki explains Rich Dad's belief that people should work to gain skills and knowledge instead of working only for salaries. According to Rich Dad, many people choose careers based purely on job security or high paychecks while ignoring the importance of learning valuable life skills. He believes financial success depends more on what a person learns over time than on short-term income. Rich Dad criticizes the traditional mindset of specializing in only one profession for an entire lifetime. He explains that many highly educated people struggle financially because they possess technical knowledge but lack broader skills such as communication, sales, leadership, investing, and business management. According to him, the modern world rewards adaptability and versatility more than narrow specialization alone. One of the most important lessons Rich Dad teaches Robert is the value of communication and sales skills. Although Robert was shy and uncomfortable speaking publicly, Rich Dad believed that the ability to communicate, negotiate, and market ideas is one of the most powerful financial skills a person can develop. He explains that many talented people remain poor simply because they cannot confidently present themselves or influence others effectively. Rich Dad also warns against becoming emotionally dependent on salaries. He explains that fear of uncertainty and failure keeps many people trapped in jobs they dislike, preventing them from exploring new opportunities or learning new skills. According to him, every new skill increases a person's value and creates future opportunities. This is why he encourages Robert to gain experience in different fields, even if some jobs pay less initially, because the long-term education can become far more valuable. Another major idea in this chapter is understanding how businesses operate as complete systems. Rich Dad says financially successful people usually understand multiple parts of business, including marketing, accounting, leadership, customer behavior, and money flow. This broader understanding helps people think like owners instead of employees. Throughout the chapter, Rich Dad emphasizes lifelong learning and adaptability. He believes industries and economies constantly change, and people who stop learning eventually fall behind. According to him, true financial security comes not from depending on one paycheck, but from having the confidence and ability to learn, adapt, and create value in different situations. By the end of the lesson, Robert realizes that jobs should not only be judged by salary, but also by the skills, experience, and knowledge they provide. The chapter ultimately teaches that communication, leadership, adaptability, and continuous learning are essential for long-term financial success and independence. Lesson 7. Overcoming Obstacles. In the 7th chapter of Rich Dad, Poor Dad, Robert Kiyosaki explains that financial success is not only about understanding money, but also about overcoming mental and emotional barriers. Rich Dad teaches that many people fail to achieve financial freedom because fear, doubt, bad habits, negativity, and emotional thinking stop them from taking action. According to him, the biggest obstacle is often a person's mindset rather than lack of opportunity or intelligence. The first obstacle Rich Dad discusses is the fear of losing money. Most people avoid investing or starting businesses because they are afraid of failure and uncertainty. Society teaches people to avoid mistakes, but Rich Dad believes mistakes are powerful teachers. Every successful investor or entrepreneur has faced losses and setbacks at some point. The difference is that financially intelligent people learn from failures instead of giving up. Rich Dad wants Robert to understand that smart risk-taking is necessary for growth and that avoiding all risks also means avoiding opportunities. Another obstacle is cynicism and negative thinking. Many people focus only on problems whenever opportunities appear. They believe investing is dangerous or that becoming rich is only possible through luck. According to Rich Dad, this mindset prevents people from recognizing opportunities around them. Successful people train themselves to see possibilities where others only see fear and difficulty. He also warns Robert not to let public opinion or negativity control his financial decisions. Rich Dad also explains laziness in a different way. He says many people stay busy with work and daily routines, but never focus on improving their financial future. They avoid learning about investing or building assets because it feels difficult or uncomfortable. True financial freedom requires discipline, focus, and consistent effort over time. The chapter also highlights the importance of habits. Rich Dad believes repeated financial behaviors shape a person's future. Many people spend money first and invest later, which keeps them financially dependent. He strongly supports the idea of pay yourself first, meaning investing and building assets before spending on luxuries. Good financial habits slowly create long-term wealth and independence. Another obstacle discussed is arrogance. Some people pretend they already know everything and refuse to continue learning. Rich Dad explains that financial education is a lifelong process, and people who stop learning eventually fall behind. Successful individuals remain humble, curious, and open to new knowledge. Finally, Rich Dad emphasizes emotional control and perseverance. Fear and greed often cause people to make poor financial decisions, while successful investors remain calm and disciplined. Building wealth takes time, patience, and resilience. Many people fail because they quit too early after facing difficulties or criticism. By the end of the chapter, Robert understands that overcoming fear, negativity, bad habits, and emotional thinking is essential for achieving financial freedom and long-term success. Lesson 8. Getting Started. In the 8th chapter of Rich Dad, Poor Dad, Robert Kiyosaki explains how people can begin their journey toward financial freedom. Rich Dad says many people learn about money but never take action because of fear, excuses, or hesitation. According to him, knowledge alone is useless without action. Building wealth starts with small decisions, disciplined habits, and the willingness to learn through experience instead of waiting for perfect conditions. One of the key lessons in this chapter is having a strong reason for wanting wealth. Rich Dad explains that financial freedom requires patience, discipline, and persistence. So people need deeper motivations such as freedom, independence, or family security. Strong emotional reasons help people continue even during failures and difficult times. Rich Dad also talks about the power of daily choices. He believes financial futures are shaped by how people spend their time and money. Wealthy people usually focus on learning, investing, and building assets instead of wasting money on temporary pleasures. Small habits repeated consistently over many years eventually create either wealth or financial struggle. Another important lesson is surrounding yourself with the right people. Rich Dad explains that negative and fearful individuals often discourage others from taking risks or trying new opportunities. Successful people learn from ambitious and knowledgeable individuals who encourage growth and independent thinking. The chapter also emphasizes self-discipline and continuous learning. Rich Dad teaches the principle of pay yourself first, meaning people should invest and build assets before spending on luxuries. He believes financial education is a lifelong process because the financial world constantly changes. Finally, Rich Dad explains the importance of taking action quickly when opportunities appear. Many people fail because they overthink or wait too long instead of learning through action. By the end of the chapter, Robert understands that financial freedom is built gradually through discipline, learning, smart choices, and consistent action over time. Lesson 9. Still want more? Here are some to-dos. In the final chapter of Rich Dad, Poor Dad, titled Still Want More, here are some to-dos, Robert Kiyosaki focuses on practical steps people can take to improve their financial future. After teaching lessons about assets, liabilities, and financial intelligence, Rich Dad explains that financial freedom is not achieved overnight. It requires continuous learning, discipline, and the willingness to take action. He believes many people remain financially stuck because they stop learning, fear failure, and become too comfortable in routines. One of the biggest lessons in this chapter is the importance of constantly searching for new knowledge and opportunities. Rich Dad encourages Robert to read books, attend seminars, study businesses, and observe successful people. According to him, financially educated people are able to notice opportunities that others completely miss. He explains that the world changes rapidly, and people who stop learning eventually fall behind. Rich Dad also emphasizes taking action instead of endlessly preparing. Many people spend years thinking about investing or starting businesses, but never begin because they are waiting for perfect conditions. Rich Dad teaches that confidence comes through experience, and experience comes through action. Mistakes and failures are not signs of weakness, but part of the learning process. Successful people fail many times before succeeding because they keep improving instead of giving up. Another important lesson is the influence of the people around us. Rich Dad explains that ambitious and successful people often surround themselves with others who motivate and challenge them. Negative people, on the other hand, can create fear and doubt. Because of this, he encourages Robert to learn from mentors and financially intelligent individuals who can provide guidance and practical knowledge. The chapter also highlights discipline and patience. Rich Dad explains that wealth is usually built slowly through consistent effort over time. Many people fail because they lose focus or quit when difficulties appear. According to him, small, disciplined actions repeated over many years can create extraordinary financial growth through compounding. Finally, Rich Dad stresses personal responsibility. He believes people should stop blaming governments, employers, or circumstances for their financial struggles and instead focus on improving their own skills and decisions. By the end of the chapter, Robert understands that financial freedom is not only about becoming rich, but about developing the mindset, habits, and intelligence needed to create long-term independence and opportunity. At its core, Rich Dad, Poor Dad is not just about becoming rich, but about changing the way people think about money and life. Robert Kiyosaki compares two different mindsets through Rich Dad and Poor Dad. Poor Dad follows the traditional path of studying hard and working for money, while Rich Dad believes in financial education, investing, ownership, and building assets that create long-term income. One of the main lessons of the book is that a high salary alone does not create wealth. Many people work hard but remain financially stressed because they increase expenses instead of building assets. Rich Dad teaches that true wealth comes from businesses, investments, and other assets that generate income over time. He also explains that fear keeps many people trapped in jobs and prevents them from taking opportunities. The book strongly emphasizes the importance of financial intelligence, something traditional schools rarely teach. According to Rich Dad, wealthy people continue learning, think differently, and take calculated risks, while others stay inside their comfort zones. By the end, Kiyosaki explains that financial freedom is built gradually through discipline, learning, patience, and consistent action. The final message of the book is that real success comes not only from money, but from the freedom and independence a person creates through smart financial decisions.